a book that chronicles the success story of The Guardian, Nigeria's flagship newspaper, was unveiled in Lagos on Thursday. The event was attended by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who singled out the role of the Nigerian media, especially The Guardian newspaper, in nurturing the current democracy. The Guardian publisher, Maiden Alex Ibro, seized the occasion to call attention of the authorities to the crisis of coherence facing Nigeria before it is too late. Arise correspondent Tokunbo Yetunji has the details.
38 years since the Guardian newspaper was introduced into Nigeria, two of its pioneer journalists have put together a publication to tell the story of the brand in a 4-section publication that is being unveiled at this venue in Lagos. It is not just the introduction of the making of the Nigerian flagship, a story of the Guardian, as the book is titled, but also a celebration of the finest in Nigerian journalism, which the brand represents, and the brains behind it, especially the visionary, the late Alex Ibro. Some of those who were there with him when the idea was brewed about 40 years ago are on hand to take the audience down the memory lane.
We were to start with an evening paper because at that time there was so much traffic in Lagos, and we thought people sitting in the traffic who want something to while away the time. It was not the age of WhatsApp or email. And his own idea was to start a newspaper that would be deep, intellectual in approach, and still be readable to the ordinary people.
That idea of those 4 decades is the big media brand now being celebrated for its consistency in ethics and professionalism, a major motivation for the authors.
Interviewing about 16 of our bosses and some of our colleagues to gather materials for this book was not easy. But the strategy of pulling almost the key figures of that era into a digital platform made it possible for us to gather more materials, authenticate facts and narrations. It helped us to get our seniors and colleagues at The Guardian to buy into the project and support us.
The book is a brilliant compromise between an edited work, pulling together a galaxy of writers, and a work where authors are essentially original.
A special honor and award for the late publisher for building a brand which is now spreading beyond newspaper publication to other businesses, including a trust fund to which 20% of takings from this unveiling will go.
The Guardian's entry into the newspaper market was as refreshing as it was uplifting. Today, as we celebrate the making of the Nigerian flagship, the broad consensus is that the Guardian has lived up to its claim.
In the way of the Guardian newspaper to always speak truth to power, the publisher seizes the occasion to voice out some concerns about the growing challenges of nationhood.
We didn't know the implication of what iconic Chinua Achebe, a professor, was saying when he wrote in his last classic, There Was a Country. Most people are quite fearful now that Nigeria is too divided to survive as a country. Only very few people believe in one Nigeria at this moment. We have Eastern Nigeria, Western Nigeria, far Northern Nigeria, North Central Nigeria, Middle Delta Nigeria, Niger Delta Nigeria, etc. There is therefore a crisis of coherence.
She will also make a case for all those in the business of newspaper publication in Nigeria and the need for a stimulus package.
It hasn't been easy for all of us. Newsprint, the most expensive raw material for printing newspapers, are imported from Europe. The implication is fast killing the newspaper industry. We appeal for relief package in this area.
The special guest here and the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo agrees with most submissions on the exploits of the Guardian newspaper in helping to build a strong democratic society. He believes there is much more to be done by the media, especially now that those referred to as retailers of discord are working hard to divide the country.
The Guardian set new standards that forever transform the practice of journalism.
Today, a more complex media and information landscape requires a core of professionals to set new standards and to raise the quality of the fare that is on offer. The pioneers of The Guardian understood that journalism operates in a social context and cannot be value neutral. The same cognitive commitment is incumbent upon all media practitioners today.
It has been nearly 4 decades of journalistic excellence. The Guardian is promising more as the brand diversifies into visual and digital media to suit the growing audience demand in the 21st century. Tokunbo Oyetuji, Arise News, Lagos.
The making of the Guardian newspaper, the flagship newspaper. From here, let's move on then to that promoted conversation with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, a professor of political science, former Minister of External Affairs, and one-time Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, Professor Akinyemi, and thank you for joining us again on The Morning Show. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Abati.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Well, quickly, this looks like a very difficult moment in Nigeria. Security challenges are extending to the southeast. Police stations being burnt down. Prisons being attacked by all kinds of non-state actors. The southwest also becoming really troubled. What does this say about the image of Nigeria within the international community?
Well, Nigeria has always been a lucky country, and that luck is still operating in the sense that the rest of the world doesn't have the time to focus on Nigerian misfortunes now, since they have problems in Myanmar, they have problems with COVID-19, they have problems even in the United States, all over the world. So, it's not to say that the world is not paying attention to our misfortunes. And that has been ably illustrated by the fact that while Biden was calling African leaders and Kamala Harris was also calling African leaders, they relegated Nigeria to the position where it was their foreign minister calling our foreign minister. So we've been put in the third-class category. This is very upsetting to those of us who have been in the field. It must be upsetting to other Africans, because you must recall that none other person than Nelson Mandela said in an interview with a Nigerian journalist that the world will not accord blacks. He didn't say Africans. He said blacks, their status, their rightful status in the world until Nigeria gets its act together. So the rightful insult meted out to Nigeria, also rightful insult meted out to all blacks. And we must keep that in mind, that whatever we do in this country reflects on blacks all over the world, because we are the only authentic African country that has the capacity to lift blacks by their bootstraps onto, if you like, a first-class status. I said the only authentic African country because I'm aware that South Africa is there. I'm aware that Rwanda is there. But we are the only African power, if I can still use that word without you bursting into laughter out of respect for our audience. We are the only African power that has the capacity to lift Africa from the third world status to the first world status, if I can borrow from Lee Kuan Yew?
Well, we are not just betraying ourselves, we're betraying the entire black race, no less. It's really quite damning. So what are your thoughts on the efforts, meager or modest as they may be, to improve our lot? Yesterday was awash with claims from the former military dictator Abdul Salami that Nigeria has 6 million small arms that have resulted in the deaths of 80,000 people. We spoke to a security expert yesterday on this show, Dr. Ekomo, and he said that that figure is actually an understatement. What are your thoughts on that and the strategies that have been proposed so far?
Yes, I do agree with Dr. Ekomo that that's understated. President Jonathan, and I'm straying into Reuben Abati's territory here now, President Jonathan set up a task committee. I don't know, it wasn't a task force, it was a task committee on this same issue. And like everything else, they classified the result. It wasn't made known to the public because I was a member of what I call the Boko Haram committee. We got hold of a copy of the result, and maybe it's because of the content. It's frightening. I agree with Ikomo that 6 million is an understated figure. Arms are flooding into Nigeria as if Nigeria is a war zone. Maybe it is going to be a war zone. Maybe they are telling us things that are going to come. You see, the moment Gaddafi got destabilized, and you will say it wasn't Gaddafi, it was Libya. But you see, at that time, Libya was Gaddafi and Gaddafi was Libya. But the moment deliberately he got destabilized, if you recall the news, the arms depot were looted. And those arms just came down south. And Nigeria at that time, with Boko Haram flexing its muscle, was regarded as a rightful platform for which the arms could find usage. And they did, if you like, a risk analysis of the problems of Nigeria. And they knew that we were not headed for a wedding ceremony, that we were headed for a turbulent future in this country. And there was money available to different groups who are being funded by people with money, to procure the arms. And that's why those arms found a respectable acceptance in Nigeria. And you have seen the evidence of that, how useful that calculation was to them, not to us. Because from the Boko Haram insurgents in the northeast, you now have herdsmen, bandits, or whatever you call them, all over Nigeria. And those arms are still flooding in. Now, the question you asked basically wants to know what are we doing about it? And I dare say, I'm sorry, I'm not in the business of running down governments or running down anybody. We are doing pretty well nothing about it. Because if you have problems in your home, what you will need to do after you yourself have done the analysis of what constitutes the problem. We still have an underpaid army. I don't believe, in fact, don't take my word for it, there's a United Nations report on the strength of, they restricted it to the police that Nigeria needs, given its landmass and given its population. Again, we came across this in one of the task forces I served on, that instead of the 345,000 plus policemen that we have, that Nigeria actually needs over 1 million policemen in Nigeria. We are nowhere near that. And I keep asking myself, there are educated people who have no jobs, who will gladly become policemen. What is the problem about increasing the number of policemen in Nigeria from maybe 345,000 to 445 to 545 every year until we meet that United Nations target? But we are not doing that. So when you ask me how are we addressing the situation, what kind of an answer do you want me to give? The Nigerian army is understaffed. I don't know whether they are well paid or not, and is underarmed. Because I've been dealing with the Nigerian, I'm a civilian, but because of my field, I've been dealing with elements, officers, men in the Nigerian army since 1970. So I do know their capability. I do know their mental preparedness. The Nigerian army that I knew and that I used to interact with in the 70s, in the 80s and so on, I don't believe that they can be overrun. Their barracks overrun, cantonment overrun by a ragtag mob called Boko Haram. I just don't believe it. But that is what is happening.
Amazing insight you've raised. There's a part in this day newspaper today that was talking about Katsina state government. Some 4 bandits said they had left banditry and surrendered 26 AK-47, 109 general purpose machine guns. And when you look at the caliber of arms that is even used to rustle cattle these days, you are shocked at the temerity of what is happening. There's a popular saying I know you will know that says, where logic ends, that's where Congo begins. Because of how Congo is blessed with so much natural resource. But there's no logic to harness it. There's insecurity everywhere. There are groups fighting here and there. Is Nigeria not fast becoming another Congo?
Well, I'm glad you used the word fast becoming, because the answer really is yes. What separates us right now from Congo are, I would say, 2 factors. One, we are still better organized as a society than the Congo. Because if you look at our trajectory from, say, 1945 until the rain started falling on our head in the mid-60s, we had time to build up a solid foundation. Honestly, it was a solid foundation that those founding fathers built up. And that foundation has still sustained us from, frankly, disintegrating like the Congo has done. The Congo is not one country. I wouldn't say this if I was still the foreign minister, because protocol wouldn't allow me to say so. But now that, I'm an old retired man, I can say so. The Congo is not one country. The Congo is several countries under several authorities. We haven't got to that stage yet. Number 2, we still have a leadership that is basically elected, so to speak, by Nigerians, rather than a leadership that is handpicked handpicked by foreign forces and then given a veneer of a democratic election. So those 2 things separate us from the Congo. If one of those 2 things, if we allow it to come under the same forces that has led Congo to where it is, then we will be in big trouble. And that's where we are headed if we are not careful. I think it was Dr. Abati who started this conversation by making reference to what happened in, is it Imo State, Owerri, Abi? In the police station.
Yes.
Now, you tell me, please, you tell me, here you have a prison yard that shares a common fence with police headquarters, that shares another common fence with government house. You know well as I do that there will be a CCTV camera or a camera system being monitored from central control by security agents located in one of those establishments. You mean this camera did not pick up the approach of a mob? Anything that, to me, anything that's more than 10 people is a mob. And it didn't raise an alarm, and they had time to attack the police station, to attack the correction service or the prison system, don't know what name they call it now, and loot that place. And there was no reaction from forces, security forces, and that will be the best guarded place in that state. And this could happen. Then I ask, what is going on? Did the CCTV camera system, is it not working? Was it sabotaged? Or it picked up what it was supposed to pick up, and the governor said there are forces behind this. Well, if the government house where it is located can be a target of a force like this, and then who is safe and what is safe in Nigeria?
Well, Prof, there's another matter of interest that I would like you to address. This talk about secession, particularly in the southwestern part of the country. The Southwest had not been pushing before now a separatist agenda. The separatist agenda was more in the southeastern part of the country. But now in the Southwest, somehow we seem to have moved from talks about restructuring and federalism to groups, certain groups also are now calling for secession. Is there truly what we can call a Southwest agenda in that direction?
There are manifestations of disagreements in the Southwest. It started just, well, I don't even know what I can say it started. I would say it started in 1963 or thereabouts. Some people will maintain that it started before then. But it started in 1963 when, because of a conspiracy between the North and the East, Chief Awolowo was jailed. Emergency declared in the Southwest, and the second manifestation of insurrection reared its head. The first manifestation was that TV insurrection in the Middle Belt. This was the second one. And the rest of the story you know. Civil War, and then after the Civil War, a whole lot of things. See, if you, and the destruction of the federalist structure, and I keep saying this, one of the fundamental agreements by our founding fathers in terms of the structure of Nigeria was a federalist structure, a federalist foundation. And there is sufficient statistics to show that between let's just say the late 1940s and 1960, that structure produced results. You only need to look at the way the regions developed. The destruction of that Federalist foundation has now led us to where we are, exacerbated by the refusal to go back to that structure. And you see, before, people thought the rain will only fall on the southwest. Now we are seeing that the rain is falling on the whole country. What baffles me is the refusal by authorities, because only authorities, frankly, who could do this. There is the refusal by the federal authorities to return to that founding structure agreed to by our founding fathers. All right, power is sweet. Nobody wants to give over power voluntarily. Those who are benefiting from it want to hold on to it. I accept that as part of the argument. But it is evident now to the blind and the deaf that the rain is falling now on all our heads.
Well, on that note, Prof, rain falling on all our heads. We'll take a short commercial break, and when we return, the conversation will continue. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor of Political Science, former Minister of External Affairs in Nigeria, and former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Prof, thank you for staying with us. Yes, before we went on break, you were saying that the rain is now falling on all our heads across Nigeria, not just in the southwest.
Yes. And what then baffles me is why those in authority cannot see that even the space of the authority is shrinking per day. Does the federal authority operate where the Boko Haram operates? Does the power of the federal authorities operate amongst the herdsmen and the bandits and the secessionist movements or the self-determination movements? No. When you push people to the wall, they fight back. And I just hope that it's a matter of common sense. Even though common sense at times does not appear to be too common in Nigeria. If you leave a festering store caused by diabetes on one finger and you ignore it, gradually it spreads. And before you know it, surgeons have to now operate on the one hand to which it has spread to. I believe that the drive for restructuring, and when people say they don't know what it is, I would advise them to go and read what Professor Jega said. He was addressing, I think, the political science group in the Northeast recently. Go and read it. It's so simple. Devolution of power. There's too much centralized power. We borrowed that from the military, or the military imposed that on us. Take the 1963 Constitution, take the 1999 Constitution, and see the difference between the two in terms of shared powers and powers left in the hands of the states, and make the necessary adjustment. That's what we did in the National Conference, and that report is still there. But when people ask me, when will that report be taken seriously? I said, don't worry. when they cannot govern anymore, they would then go back to that report. But I hope by then, a report designed in 2015 will not prove to have been too little, too late.
I hope so too, sir. I want to go back to your earlier point, linking the standing of Nigeria with the standing of black people all over the world. What is your reaction to yesterday's Holocaust remembrance in Israel, where the whole country stood still and sirens blared in remembrance of the 6 million people killed in the Holocaust? And the fact that since the 1950s, $80 billion has been paid in reparations to Holocaust survivors. As of the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, $662 million have been paid to Holocaust survivors who are struggling during this pandemic. And yet, naught has been paid towards the Africans who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade, or even the Arab slave trade before that. Why is it that black people and the obvious crimes against us have been so dismissed? With the Holocaust, you hear never forget. If anybody mentions slavery, you're told, oh, just move on. Whereas Americans in the South haven't even moved on. They still have their Confederate flags, but we're the ones expected to just move on. What's your take on all of that?
Oh, you've lumped several, as you are Tundun, you've lumped several issues together, and I'm just going to try and tease them out. The foundation of your question is that we have not paid sufficient commemorative, let me rephrase that. We have ignored slavery, the effect of slavery on Africa, while Israel, who lost 6 million, while we lost 30 million, 30 million through slavery. Israel has ensured that the rest of the world will never forget. And as you've rightly pointed out, they've concretized that commemoration financially. In our case, we have not paid sufficient respect. It's disrespectful for the victims of slave trade. When I say 30 million, I'm including the people who died during the actual fighting in Africa to capture slaves. Scholars tend not to include that. I'm including those loaded onto the ships going Atlantic or going Indian Ocean or being taken across the Sahara. And that is the Arab slave trade. I'm including them. I'm including those who died during the trips, whether across the ocean or across the Sahara Desert. And then, of course, those who landed where they are sent. Put all those figures together, and you will get something close to 30 million. The reason why we are being disrespectful of them precisely is where we started this conversation. There is no black African country that is sufficiently powerful. It's unfortunate that the only African country who could and who should and who will, I am sure, make this drive for reparation, for commemoration, is Nigeria. But Nigeria is really not interested because the leading forces in Nigeria still, for religious reasons, don't want to focus on the Arab connection to this slave trade. And because of that, they don't want to focus on commemoration of slavery at all. Ghana has tried. Under Nkrumah, and under Rawlings and under the present government. And I doff my hat to Ghana for that. Remember, Ghana, in fact, this Stevie Wonder has just decided to move from the United States to where? To Ghana.
Well, Prof, unfortunately, we've run out of time, and we'd just like to thank you very much for joining us this morning, and for the light you've been able to shed on so many issues of importance.